Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The world doesn't stop when someone breaks your heart. You still clock in. You still fix the same damn engines, drink the same cheap coffee, and pretend your hands don't shake when her name flashes across your phone. That's what life had become for me. Clockwork and silence. Every morning at 6:30, I'd unlock my garage, slide open the door, and stare at the empty space where a car used to be parked. Julia's silver sedan, the one she drove away in a week ago, saying she needed clarity. I'd bet my entire toolbox she found that clarity in Mike's apartment. The guy who used to linger at her office dinners, accidentally, standing too close. I'd seen it coming months ago. The half-smiles, the sudden secrecy, the way she started dressing up just to grab groceries. I wasn't a fool. I just wanted to believe she wouldn't cross that line. The day she left, she didn't even cry. She just said, "We've grown apart, Daniel. I need to find myself before I lose everything." I remember staring at her suitcase, at how neatly her clothes were folded, and thinking, you already did. The first few nights were hell. The silence was too loud. Every creak in the house sounded like her voice. I'd bury myself in work, spending late hours at the shop, fixing other people's cars just to stop fixing my own thoughts. But something changed that Friday night. A black SUV pulled up outside, just as I was closing shop. The door opened, and there she was, Julia. Same woman who'd walked away like I was a chapter she'd finished reading. Only this time, her makeup was smudged, her voice trembling, her eyes hollow. "Daniel," she started, clutching her coat tighter. I didn't speak, just watched her struggle to hold herself together. "I made a mistake," she said finally, her breath shaky. "I can't live without you." The words floated in the cold night air, heavy, rehearsed. The kind of lines people use when they've run out of places to go. I stayed silent for a few seconds, letting her twist in that stillness. Then, slowly, I tilted my head. "So," I said calmly, "Mike dumped you, huh?" Her face went white. I gave a quiet laugh, one that didn't reach my eyes. "What happened, Jules?" The fairy tale didn't last long. She looked down, lips trembling. "You don't understand. It wasn't like that." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I cut her off. "You thought you were trading stability for excitement, love for lust, loyalty for attention. You thought the grass was greener on the other side, until you realized it was fake turf." Her eyes filled, and for a moment, I saw the woman I once loved, vulnerable, afraid, and lost. But I wasn't the same man anymore. "Please, Daniel," she whispered. "Can we just talk? I need to make things right." I unlocked the garage door and gestured toward the light spilling out. "Come in," I said quietly. "Let's talk." Her relief was almost pathetic. She followed me inside, glancing around at the familiar space. The old couch, the wedding photos still hanging, the faint scent of motor oil and coffee. She didn't know this wasn't forgiveness. This was setup, because while she was out finding herself with another man, I was busy finding something else, proof. Real, undeniable proof. And tonight, I let her see what it felt like to lose everything in one breath. "Want a drink?" I asked, grabbing a bottle from the counter. "Yeah," she said softly. "Please." I handed her the glass, watching her hands tremble as she took it. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "You still love me, don't you?" I smiled faintly, leaning back in my chair. "Oh, Julia," I said slowly, "you'll find out soon enough." The show had just begun. For the first 3 days after she showed up on my porch, I did what most people do when faced with a wound. I pretended it wasn't there. I woke at dawn, tuned the radio to the station I'd listened to since college, and rubbed sleep from my eyes until my hands stopped trembling. I fixed brakes, replaced belts, and answered the same neighbor's questions with the same polite gruffness I'd always worn like a coat. Routine is a funny thing. It doesn't heal you. It prepares you. It buys you time. But time was exactly what I needed. While Julia sobbed and begged and replayed every regret like a scratched record, I was quietly collecting facts. Not out of spite for spite's sake. Out of a stubborn need for truth. If a marriage falls apart, I wanted to know the shape of the fracture. I wanted to see if the pieces fit back together. If they didn't, I wanted to make sure she felt the consequences of walking away without understanding what she'd broken. First, the messages. I had saved them. Not many people realize how careless they become when they want to be secret. Marcus, the smooth-talking accountant who'd suddenly become the center of Julia's world, slipped. Late-night patterns left traces. A string of can't wait and see you texts, photos taken in hotel lobbies, screenshots where Marcus forgot to blur the reflection of his hand on a window. The small things. The breadcrumbs. Second, a private investigator. I didn't want drama built on gossip. I wanted the kind of verification a lawyer would respect and a judge would nod at. So I paid a man named Alvarez, a retired cop who did PI work on the side, to document what he could legally. Alvarez wasn't interested in hurting anyone. He was interested in truth. He found Marcus's double life. Small loans Marcus had taken from coworkers, a pattern of promising promotions that never came, and testimonials from two women who said Marcus always came with stories and left with favors. Nothing illegal necessarily, just the kind of moral pattern that reveals a person's character. Third, a plan. Because revenge isn't a suitcase of insults you fling open. Revenge, the kind I wanted, is strategy. It's a slow burn that leaves the other person standing in the light and realizes they've been watched the entire time. I didn't tell Julia any of that. Instead, I listened when she spoke, cataloging her apologies. I let her inch back into the house we had built together, watching how she moved through rooms like someone trying to remember choreography. She'd start a sentence about us, and then trail off, eyes darting to the family photo on the mantel, the one where we'd been at the coast, both of us grinning like idiots. The memory stung. I let it. You should go see him, I heard myself say one morning, voice low, almost bored. Face what you ran toward. Maybe then you'll understand what you threw away. The words surprised her more than they surprised me. Julia's breath hitched. Why would you? She started. Because I want you to choose, I said simply. But not out of comfort. Choose because you've seen both sides. She left that day to find Marcus. I didn't follow. I cleaned the shop until my shoulders ached. I called Alvarez and asked for more. He'd learned enough to be dangerous in all the right ways. Marcus had been using company expense reports to inflate travel costs, leading to a quiet HR whisper. Marcus had been telling clients he'd secure them preferential rates that he never delivered. Again, maybe none of it would lead to criminal charges, but within a small company, reputation is currency. People listen to reputation. That evening, I did something I promised myself I wouldn't. I let Marcus into the house. Not because I wanted to confront him directly. That would have been a fight. I wanted him to meet my calm. Marcus arrived with the arrogance of a man who believed charm could scrub off consequences like a cheap cologne. He didn't notice the framed photographs, the signs of a life where someone had built a home, not just a partnership. He offered a smile that had always struck me as rehearsed. You're not what I expected, he said to me, a faint echo of a man sizing up a rival. You're not what I expected either, I replied, pouring coffee as if we were old friends catching up. Conversation smooth, then smooth some more. Marcus prattled on about office politics and a promotion he was sure was around the corner. He used the word we when referencing Julia, as if the distance between them had evaporated in his mind. I watched his mouth. I listened for the tells, and I let him underestimate me. A week later, he had a meeting with HR. An anonymous packet, compiled and delivered by men with clean shoes and cleaner consciences, sat on the director's desk. Expense receipts with mismatched dates, email threads where Marcus promised deliverables he never completed, and a few carefully redacted messages that suggested a pattern of taking advantage of colleagues. I didn't send the packet. Alvarez did. He had contacts. He had access. He also had the kind of quiet authority that made the packet land in the right hands. News feeds in small towns travel on whispers and polite nods. By the time Marcus's story hit the office grapevine, he'd already begun to realize the floor beneath him was soft. The man who called himself polished watched his career blur into apologetic emails. Julia called me in a panic. You didn't. You can't have. I didn't do anything illegal, I said, voice even. I gave someone information. He'll have to answer for it. And while he does, you can see what it's like to stand on the edge. What I was doing wasn't about cruelty. It was about truth. I wanted her to understand the cost of walking out. Not just to me, but to herself. Marcus crumpled under scrutiny. He called Julia a name she'd never heard before, And when she ran back to me after that, shaking, I didn't fold her into my arms. Instead, I invited her to a community fundraiser I was hosting the following week. Thank you event for loyal customers and neighbors. The kind of place where reputations are polished and masks are worn politely. It was the perfect stage. As I watched Julia rehearse apologies in the mirror, her hands trembling, I felt an odd serenity. The next act would be public. The next reveal would be slow, surgical, truths unveiled in the kindest, coldest way possible. I wasn't out for blood. I just wanted the world, and her, to see the person she'd chosen and the person she'd abandoned. And then, when the lights were on and people were watching, she would have to stand and explain why she'd left. The show, I decided, would not be a shout. It would be a mirror. And when she saw herself reflected back, she wouldn't like the woman looking back. The night of the fundraiser arrived with the kind of calm that hides a storm behind it. The town community hall was dressed in strings of soft white lights, and tables lined with homemade pies and coffee urns. Nothing extravagant, just local faces, small talk, and the comfortable rhythm of familiarity. I'd organized this event months before Julia left. Back then, it was meant to thank my customers for keeping my garage alive after a rough year. But tonight, it had a different purpose, one she didn't yet understand. When Julia stepped into the room beside me, heads turned. I could feel the whisper before I heard it. People noticed. Small towns remember when a woman disappears for a week with another man. They remember, and they talk quietly, pretending to smile. She felt it too. Her hand brushed mine, a nervous, fragile touch. "Daniel," she murmured, "maybe I shouldn't have come." "You'll be fine," I said evenly, keeping my tone light. "These are our people. They've missed you." Her eyes darted toward the corner where a few wives exchanged knowing looks. I didn't rescue her. I wanted her to feel what it was like to live inside a truth she couldn't spin anymore. The band started playing. People moved in small circles, chatting and laughing. I shook hands, accepted thanks, posed for a few photos. Julia stayed near the punch table, pretending to check her phone. Every few minutes, she looked toward me as if searching for permission to exist again. And that's when Marcus walked in. He didn't belong here. But guilt makes people reckless. He wore a pressed shirt, his usual smirk dulled by exhaustion. His eyes scanned the room and stopped on Julia. For a brief second, neither of them breathed. She turned pale. "You invited him?" she whispered, voice trembling. I smiled faintly. "I didn't. He came on his own." Truth was, I'd let word of the event accidentally reach him. People like Marcus can't resist an audience. They need to prove they still have control, even when it's slipping. He strode toward us, confidence brittle beneath his skin. "Daniel," he greeted, extending his hand as though we were business partners. "Marcus," I replied, gripping it firmly. "Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be busy cleaning up that HR mess." A few nearby guests turned to the mention. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Rumors travel fast in small towns," he muttered. "Truth travels faster," I said quietly, and walked away before he could respond. Julia followed me outside into the cool night air, her breathing shallow. "Daniel, please," she pleaded. "This is humiliating. Everyone's staring. You can't just—" "I can't just what?" I turned, meeting her gaze. "Hold you accountable. Let people see what happens when you lie." Her voice broke. "I know I made mistakes, but I never wanted this. You're trying to destroy me." I shook my head. "No, Julia. I'm showing you the world without the lies you built. You can rebuild from that, if you still know how." She covered her face, tears slipping through her fingers. For a moment, I felt something twist inside me. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition. The part of me that had loved her still hated watching her crumble. But love and forgiveness weren't the same thing. Inside, the band changed songs, an upbeat tune that didn't match the tension crawling through the night. I watched her gather herself, shoulders shaking, eyes red. She looked older, smaller, and yet somehow clearer. She finally whispered, "You win, Daniel. Is that what you wanted?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a slow breath and said, "I never wanted to win. I wanted you to understand what it cost to walk away without a goodbye, to break something you thought you could come back to any time you wanted." She blinked, her voice barely a whisper. "And now." I looked back at the hall's windows glowing with warm light. Now I think I'm done bleeding for someone who never cared to see the wound. Her lips trembled. So that's it. You just move on. Maybe, I said softly. Or maybe I already have. I left her standing there and went back inside. Marcus, ever the opportunist, had drifted to a small circle of people near the refreshments, spinning another one of his charming stories. I joined the group quietly, catching the end of his sentence. Must have been a misunderstanding. You know how jealous ex-husbands get. The laughter he expected never came. Instead, the room fell into an uneasy hush as I pulled a folded envelope from my jacket pocket. Funny you should say that, I said calmly, because I brought something that might clear up those misunderstandings. His smile faltered. I placed the envelope on the table and tapped it once. Expense reports, HR correspondence, and a few messages that somehow ended up on the company server. I'm sure you'll have fun explaining those. A few people exchanged looks. Marcus tried to laugh it off, but his face was draining color fast. This isn't the place for. Then maybe you shouldn't have come, I said evenly. Julia was at the doorway, watching, frozen in disbelief. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I just turned to the people around me and said, "You all deserve to know the truth. Sometimes silence protects the wrong person. I've been silent long enough." Marcus stammered something under his breath, then pushed past me and left the hall without looking back. The music stumbled, conversation resumed awkwardly, and the air felt lighter, as if a storm had passed without thunder. Julia stepped closer, her face streaked with tears. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "He was already ruined." "No," I said. "He just thought he was untouchable. There's a difference." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly, defeated. When the event ended, I stood outside alone, the hum of the night settling around me. People patted my back, offering quiet respect. But victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like closure. Behind me, Julia's voice broke the silence. "I still love you, Daniel." I turned, meeting her eyes under the flicker of the parking lot lights. "Maybe you do," I said. "But I don't think you love the person I became after you left." And for the first time in months, I walked away without looking back. The next chapter wouldn't be about revenge. It would be about rebuilding, not to prove her wrong, but to prove I'd survived. The show was over, but the lesson would echo for a lifetime. The morning after the fundraiser felt strange, quiet but not heavy, like the world had finally exhaled after holding its breath for too long. The sun poured through the blinds, soft and forgiving, landing on the framed photo of me and Julia for better days. Her smile in that picture used to tear me apart. Now it just reminded me of a man who had tried everything to hold together something that was already cracking. I poured myself a cup of coffee, black and strong, and watched the steam rise. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of waiting for her text or wondering what she was doing. The silence in the house wasn't lonely anymore. It was peace. Julia hadn't stayed the night. After Marcus's public collapse, she left the fundraiser quietly, saying nothing. I didn't stop her. We both said enough. Around noon, there was a soft knock at the door. When I opened it, she stood there again, hair pulled back, no makeup, no excuses left to give. Just a woman stripped of pretense. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside. She walked to the kitchen table, the same place we'd shared breakfast 100 times. But this time, she didn't sit. She just stood there, hands clasped together, searching for the right words. "I deserved what happened," she said finally. "All of it. I thought I knew what I wanted: attention, excitement, something different. But all I really wanted was to feel seen. And you were always there, but I was too blind to notice." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear that from me." For a long time, I said nothing. Watching her now, I saw not the woman who betrayed me, but someone who'd been broken by her own choices. There was no satisfaction in that, just truth. "Julia," I said quietly, "what you did changed me. Not just how I see you, but how I see myself." For a while, I thought revenge would make me feel whole again. But it didn't. It just showed me how much I let your choices define my worth. Her eyes shimmered with tears. "Then what now?" "Now," I said, "we move on. Separately. You rebuild your life, and I'll rebuild mine. No hatred, no shouting. Just endings that make room for something better." She nodded slowly, as if the words cut but also healed. "I really did love you once." "I know," I said. And for a while, that was enough. She walked toward the door, pausing once to glance back. I hope you find peace, Daniel. I already did, I said. When the door closed behind her, I stood there for a moment, letting the stillness settle. Then I went back to the garage, where my world made sense. Bolts, engines, things that could be fixed with patience and work. As I cleaned a wrench and set it back in place, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. Tired eyes, faint lines, but a steadiness that hadn't been there before. For months, I thought revenge would be the end of the story. But it turned out, the real victory was letting go without bitterness. Life moved on quietly after that. Word spread that Marcus had left town. Julia transferred to another branch of her company and started therapy, from what mutual friends said. And me? I expanded the shop, hired a young apprentice, and started sleeping through the night again. Every now and then, I'd see couples at the diner, laughing, holding hands, sharing pancakes like love was the easiest thing in the world. And instead of bitterness, I felt something simple, gratitude. Because pain had taught me something I never would have learned otherwise. That peace isn't found in punishing the person who hurt you. It's found in rebuilding the person you became after they did. And as the bell above the garage door rang that afternoon, a new customer walked in with a smile, asking, "Are you the owner here?" I smiled back, wiping my hands on a rag. "Yeah," I said. "Name's Daniel. Welcome." The past had already closed its book. What came next was mine to write, page by page, in peace.